And this is one of the smallest museums. We came across hemp yesterday, and here's this is the director of this museum, and she's holding hemp here. Anyone know what the Latin name for hemp is? Come on then. Cannabis. Yeah, okay. Now you all know what cannabis is used for. Yeah? You can smoke it. Yeah? Really interesting stuff. But in fact, the one you smoke isn't this one. Okay? The cannabis you smoke is cannabis indica. This one is cannabis sativa, and you can make all sorts of things out of it because it's very fibrous. And you saw Sky's bag yesterday, which in fact was a cotton bag, but would traditionally have been made out of the fibers of hemp. The other thing that you can do with this material is to make rope. Okay, so this is making rope using hemp in this tiny little eco-museum, which is, as I say, about the size of this room, maybe a little bit longer. And this is the last surviving rope works in this little town in Italy. And previously, it was the mainstay of the local economy. These are local volunteers. These ladies used to work in rope factories, so they know the technique. Okay? And they wanted to make sure that this last surviving rope works wasn't destroyed. So they put all their time and effort into conserving it. They get something like 700 visitors a year, so it's not a great tourist attraction. But they do it because they value it, they love it. And in fact, it's now been brought into the local sort of museum environment, and they do get a little bit of money from the town council to help run it. So a really interesting place, but again, developed by local people because they saw it as important. It represented their history and their culture, and of course the intangible knowledge associated with growing hemp and making it into rope. This different kind of new museology, going away from eco-museums to what people in the English-speaking world think new museology is. Again, this new look at museums made them think about values, different values for museums, different ways of working. And all these different ways of working, if you like, in today's museums, we, again, in English, go under this title of new museology. And I think it's quite interesting to compare the ideas of modern, postmodern to new museology. So, if you like, in the past, we were exclusive. We're now inclusive, and museums under new museology have access policies, deal with outreach, and we have this social role. From independence, we've gone to interdependence, the need for networking and consultation with local people. We've gone from a period of growth to one of sustainability, so we're interested in the conservation ethic and the care of resources. We've gone from the traditional to the futuristic, new approaches with social and environmental aims and the use of new technologies. Particularly important, I think we've gone from a position of cultural dominance to appreciating cultural difference and the celebration of culture, and cultural inclusion becomes important to us. We've gone from centralization to decentralization, and the idea of the site museums, and the idea of representation to the idea of reality, honesty, and truth, and the idea of using multiple voices in museums. I think new museology, as we think of it really in the Western world in terms of Western museum practices, new museology has done these things. It challenges the idea of what's valuable and how it's judged, questions the ethical aspects of museum activities, challenges the political stances or versions of histories adopted by museums and exhibitions, shift, if you like, shift away from the curator as the sole source of authority, questioning who's got the right to represent others and oneself, recognition of the importance of the non-tangible to the historical record, so this is where ICH comes in, expansion of the idea of acceptable museum content. So not just objects, but lots of other things. Re-evaluation of the relationship between objects and the historical record. Getting away from the idea of the museum just as a building. Recognition of the ongoing contingent and subjective nature of the historical record. Increased attention given to stakeholders and participants. So really the idea of talking to local people, getting the local community involved, and we'll be hearing more about that later. Greater awareness by external groups of the authority and utility of the museum as a public space. So what can you use the museum for? It's not just about exhibitions, but it could be about meetings and local decision making, for example. We've seen changes to the balance of power between museums, collectors and the public. Greater sense of commitment to public funders, diversification of our audiences, and diversification of the roles that museums are expected to play. I mean, just to summarize very quickly, this is what I hope I've told you, or some of the things that I hope that you've been able to take on board from this little talk. The original New Museology, or Community Museology, encouraged new approaches to museums, giving them a social role, especially in poor rural communities. And eco-museums were a way of implementing these new ideas. And the focus in eco-museums is on democracy, process, heritage, and community within a defined place. Postmodern New Museology, which I skipped through very quickly, which we now see in most, I never know whether to call it Western or Northern museums, has incorporated a whole range of changes really about the roles of museums and what we're for, and their strategic and operational practices. Thank you very much. Thanks.